Hello and welcome to the Next in Line podcast, where we are helping to prepare you for whatever is next in line. As always, I'm your host, Chance Pitts, and I'd like to thank you for tuning into this episode. Guys and gals, before we get too deep into this episode, which is an awesome recap episode of the Pitts Pacing Crew going out to help Dan Gilliam with his race in Arizona, the Cocodona 250 this past week, I want to take care of the housekeeping. If you receive value or entertainment from this episode of the Next in Line podcast, I would ask that you share the show with like-minded individuals who could receive that same kind of value. That's the number one way for us to grow this podcast, grow the movement, and to help as many people as possible. Now, guys, you can also leave us a rating or review on whatever platform you find yourself listening on. You can give us a follow on social media. That's at Next in Line Development on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We'd love to have you there. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about any of the announcements or anything that's said during the podcast, you can also shoot us a DM on those platforms, and that'll be the fastest way to get in touch with us. Now, guys, moving into the announcements, we just finished up pacing at Habanero, so the next running events that we have on the books are going to be Ricochet's Riot, which is a 50K, plus some shorter distances as well for anybody interested in that, out in Killeen, Texas on June 10th. Following that, guys, we'll be out at Habanero 100. That's Habanero in Cat Spring, Texas on August 12th. We're doing the Habanero Relay. It sounds like we're going to have several teams out there. So if you want to be a part of that, guys, make sure you get with us. Shoot us a DM, let us know, and we'll find a place for you guys. Whether you're experienced or whether you're just looking out there to get out there to make yourself grind through it and get a little bit more resilient. You got a great group of people out there to do it with you. And then, guys, we also have the KD 225 in October coming up. That's my 225-mile ultramarathon, kind of the large, very main headline race, if you will, for what we're trying to do this year and accomplish. So super excited about that. And then we're going to follow up on December 2nd, going and crewing and pacing for the Brazos Bend 100. Guys, if you're interested in any of those events, give us a holler. Let us know. Like I said, at Next in Line Development on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We'd love to hear from you there. Now, guys, what we have here is a recap of us going out. That's my father, Billy Pitts, and I to Arizona to go pace the Cocodona 250 for Dan Gilliam. This is the Just Pacing Crew podcast. I look forward to getting Dan on the episode to actually recap the entire race and to also talk a little bit about his story and just his life and the journey that he's been on, which is a spectacular one as well. But I'm going to give him a little bit more time to process that race. And for now, we're going to dive into this episode. So please enjoy this podcast with my dad, Mr. Billy Pitts. All right. Well, it's been a long week, but here we are. How are you doing, Pops?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Chance?
Doing good. I like that hat you got there.
I know, man. It looks really good. Kind of like yours.
Yeah, a little spiffy. If anybody
Yeah.
doesn't know, we were out there this past couple of days pacing Dan Gilliam for the Cocodona 250, last 60 miles or so.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really good time. Tired. I can't imagine what he feels like right now. Um, and as mentioned in the intro, we'll catch you up with Dan here pretty soon. But for now, this is just going to be a little bit of a crew / pacer recap from my dad and me. We'll get into the weeds of the actual race and everything that went on with Dan. He's agreed to get on the show, so we'll do that probably sometime in the next month or so.
That'll
But
be cool.
yes, sir. But for now, man, you just want to dive into kind of the story of how everything went down?
Yeah, man. Shoot. Yeah. You asked me to come out and help out, or you asked me if I'd be interested, and I said, shoot, let's do it. Just like all of these things we've kind of gotten into. But yeah, flew out there, got the rental car, picked you up from the airport, and we just hauled straight to where he was at to meet him because he was waiting for us. About a 2-hour drive, and got up there. Where were we at? Munns Park.
Munns Park was where we caught him. Yes, sir.
And got there about right before 10 o'clock, and then you were ready to go like shortly after 10 o'clock. I mean, it was quick. You were on the trail.
Absolutely. For anybody that doesn't know, first off, Cocodona 250 is a 250-mile ultramarathon that runs from Black Canyon City all the way to Flagstaff, Arizona. It is a crazy course, 40,000 foot of elevation or something like that over the duration. And Dan was already about 3/4 of the way done with the race, roughly, probably a little bit more than that whenever we caught up to him at Munns Park.
He was
Um,
around 190, I think, on the mileage.
yeah, we had some prior obligations. I had gotten asked to attend a leadership training for work. So that's why we got there a little bit later in the week. But Dan had some awesome pacers out there, including his fiance Grace as well, who's a rock star out there, as far as a
Yes.
crew goes.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, all just genuinely awesome. And there's some awesome people as well. And just a little backstory. So we ran into in my first 100 miler, Habanero 100. I was running that race, and a guy from California named Todd Flavin showed up out there. And he parked next to us. He didn't have a crew, didn't have pacers or anything. And he was completely self-supported and did his own thing, but we also took him in as best we could. I think somebody fed him a burger from our crew, let him chill out in the tent, for a little while, but he did a good job out there. And meeting Todd was cool. Got him plugged in. He was started listening to the podcast a little bit and passed it on to Dan. And that's how we initially met Dan, through social media. And then you were running the Rocky Raccoon back in February, and Dan was also running that same race over in Huntsville. And that's where we had a probably 1 minute conversation, just saying hello, actually seeing each other and meeting, and it was really cool. And shortly after that, we received a message from him saying, "Hey, if y'all have nothing going on and you want to come pace for me at Cocodona, you're more than welcome to." And where most people would probably be like, that's a long way to go pace somebody. It's a flight and rental cars and stuff like that. We came running, right?
We said, why not? Why not?
Man,
Who knows when you're going to get to do something like that again?
exactly. And man, I'll tell you, I know he told us countless times that we helped him out a lot in that situation, but the truth is, man, I learned so much, and it was so cool seeing him out there. I don't know what your big takeaways were, but man, to see somebody grind it out like that and then seemingly get stronger as we go further into the race, overcoming some really big issues. I mean, that was just crazy to me.
I know with the section that I was out there with him, I was out there and my hip had been kind of bothering me before we ever went, but it started flaring up on some of the climbs, and I'm like starting to whine in my head, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Quit whining, quit crying. This guy's run over 200 miles, and I'm following him up this mountain, up
Yeah.
this hill. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can manage. I can manage my little part here. Suck it up.
Yeah, I know. He's just like a mountain goat, like a machine, just going up those rocks and mountains too out there. It's wild. Um, and we'll dive into all that. But the first section, whenever we caught him at 10 p.m., with headlamps and full uh, hydration bladders and soft flasks and all that stuff, and just loaded down with gear, we took off into the night out of Munns Park. That stretch was 19 and a half miles, and we climbed up to, I want to say, like, was it 7,000 foot of elevation or something like that up on the ridge that we went up to.
Right. Yes.
um and man, it was crazy. I've never seen anything like some of the things we ran into up there. um the wind chill and everything, it was 25 degrees up there on those logging roads. They had bad storms come in, so parts of the trail had hit, I think, 60-mile-an-hour winds whenever it was gusting, and ripped some of the trees down. So you were crawling over and around and under trees, on those logging roads. Man, we found people that were lost up there that were trying to find the trail, that luckily we had downloaded that file to our watch and we were using navigation. So
Right.
people were just tagging along with us, getting pointed in the right direction. And man, we'd see people huddled up under trees with an emergency blanket. It
Like I said,
was
that was notable because it got cold up there. I don't know if it was the mountain air or what it was, but it seemed like the cold just kind of cut through.
it
Did you
had
guys
a
see that at night?
bite. Yeah, it,
Yeah.
it had a bite to it that was just unreal. Um, but yeah, no, heading down those roads, we found all kinds of people that were in like really weird, bad spots. Um, and it was kind of a good thing we ran across a couple of them. They stuck with us and got pointed in the right direction, as some of the trails just cut across off the main road and onto an open field kind of thing. So it was really kind of crazy, but It worked out for the best, I think, and we rounded out that first. I don't know, it was probably about 9-10 miles to get over to the Kelly Canyon aid station up there on top of the ridge as well, which is a non-crew aid station, so it was just me and Dan. And we came into that aid station, and man, between the cold, between how far we were into the race, because we were what about 200 miles flat into that race.
Yeah.
Um, there was just a lot of people that were just, man, kind of just hanging out around the fires, trying to get warm, waiting for the sunrise, trying to scarf down some food. I mean, there was a lot of people in dark, dark places. That's not saying anything bad about them. I mean, at that point in the race, I couldn't imagine going through that, but that
Right.
was that was a little bit crazy, man, to get up there in the mix on that and be kind of a witness to what was going on up there and people falling apart, you know?
But with all of that, I got your text saying that you had arrived at that aid station. I was like, already? You guys are
Yeah.
moving pretty good, you know?
Yeah, no, that's the truth. We picked up, man. We were moving at a fast clip going up there. And because of that energy, I mean, Dan's going to talk about that, I'm sure. But because of that energy in there, it was just like you walked into a funeral. It was bad, just negative, like kind of pull you down, suck you in, make you want to stay there. And because of that, we booked it out of there. We got as much food as we could in our bellies, refilled our bladders and stuff like that, and started the long stretch through the night, through the cold, out to Fort Tuthill. Um,
Right.
and we, man, we saw some cool looking skies, saw some awesome sights. It opened up in logging country up there, just beautiful forest. And if it wasn't freezing cold up there, because to be honest, we packed decently well for the cold, but it was still cutting through everything we had. I had some thin leggings on, pair of running shorts over those. And then for the top, I had a t-shirt, I had a long sleeve, and then I believe on top of that was my rain jacket, and that was it, with a pair of gloves on and maybe a beanie on my head. And man, it was all we could do to keep moving and start doing some running, just to stay warm, you know.
Right. Right.
Which
Yeah.
that's another thing, knowing, like, seeing how he was still running after putting in 200 miles like that. That was, at that point I knew we were going in the right direction and we were going to do some cool stuff coming out of there, you know.
Yeah.
um and then I think in the meantime, in the background, you and Grace rolled over to Walnut, is that right?
Yes, we rolled over to Walnut. No, we rolled over to Fort Tuttle.
Fort Tuttle,
Fort
that's right, we
Tuttle.
were going to Fort Tuttle out of
We
Katie or Kelly.
we ran over there right quick, and then we caught a few winks while we were waiting on you guys to get there.
Yeah, how long did you end up getting to sleep, because that was your first sleep you'd gotten that night?
About 3.5 hours or so.
About
Yeah.
3.5 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
And at which point we came into to Tut Hill earlier than y'all thought as well. I think we
Yeah. You
came in
woke me
around,
up.
yeah, came in around just past 4 a.m., I think.
I think by
Um,
4:23, I got it on my phone where you called me and said we're here. I was like, oh
yeah,
man.
and man, we rolled in, and it was cool. We came in and got Dan some food. His feet were bothering him pretty good at that point, I think. So Grace came in, did some taping up, got him some, I think we got him some food, maybe a little bit of medicine. And that's
Yeah.
one thing you can probably talk about Grace's tape better than I can, but she's a wizard with that stuff, man.
Oh man, she read a book about it and learned it herself because she figured she was going to have to do that kind of stuff. And man, she's awesome. She was actually getting having to tape up other people as well because she was so good at it. Even though there was medical attention at those aid stations,
Yeah.
she was doing a great job with it.
Yeah. I think she even volunteered medical at one of the, aid stations. I don't remember
Yeah.
which one it was, but it was earlier in the race. Um, but yeah, she was doing an awesome job. And like you had mentioned, I woke you up from your nap so we could swap out our aid stations. And right then and there, that was kind of the conclusion of the 19 and a half spot from Munns Park out to Fort Tuthill for me. So if you want to
Right.
carry into the next part of that.
No, we got ready to go, and he was, like I say, getting himself ready to go, and we headed out from there. The sun was just starting to come up. It comes up early out there,
It
and we
does.
headed out. We headed on that. We actually we saw a couple of people when we came out of there. Then we saw no one for a long time, and it was like single track trails where we had to follow each other into the woods and stuff. And elevation got fairly high, but we saw no one for a long time. And I just tried to keep him pumped up, keep him his mind going. We were talking and just keeping his mind off of the hurting and the pain that is going on all over his body throughout that time. So, but we just worked through that part of it. Then we got into some climbing that we had to do, and that dude can climb. I'm telling you what, Dan can
Yeah.
go up some hills. And I was like I was saying earlier, I was thinking, man, my hips kind of bother me. I'm kind of whining, and I'm looking at him over 200 miles, and he's just going up the hill like, all right, suck it up, you got to go, come on. And
Yeah.
but we stayed together, and I paced him from behind for a while. I paced him from in front for a while. Just trying to change things up, keep his mind going. And we got into some. Once we had other runners that started because they started another race, I think a 36-mile race at some point that
Yep.
morning. And so we had other runners that kind of started coming by us and stuff. But we also got into some downhill, then in some uphill. We had some pretty good climbing to do toward the end of it, especially. And that section ended up being 17 and a half miles. But he did really well. I mean, when you're that far along in a race, you have like spurts. And I'm no expert, but just from what I've seen with you and seen from my 100-mile and then seen with Dan there, you have spurts in there where you feel really good. And there were some moments where we ran for some stretches in there, and then all of a sudden the fatigue hit him, and we would be walking again, and you could tell like almost he was standing there, almost just kind of teetering a little bit there, where he was just kind of zoning out a little bit and be like, "Hey, come on, let's go," And I think I don't. Some of those people that don't have pacers out there, man, hats off to them. It's tough because it's all in your head. You got to keep yourself going. But and he was outstanding. There's no doubt that he would have made it without Pacers, but I was glad that we were there to be able to experience it and help him in every way we could.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's not a doubt in my mind either that he would have made it. I know we were able to help pick up that pace and drive it along a little bit, which was awesome. I think we kind of put a good solid amount of hours, a handful to 10 hours, somewhere in between there, on some of the people that he was close to, back at the
Yeah,
point that we joined in Munns Park. So, seeing that kind of impact on it, puts something kind of tangible in your hands, makes it a little bit cooler to see. So, but I agree, he was trucking right along and he was doing dang good. So I was really glad we got to keep pushing him through. And y'all guys started out, I think, just before 5, and the sun was coming up over there in Tut Hill, and
yeah,
y'all made it to Walnut Canyon, probably
right.
about what was that, 11:30 ish?
Somewhere in there. Yeah, I knew it was somewhere in there. Yeah. And the whole thing was that we all along we were talking about, on the stretch you guys did last, wanting to get up that peak. And I know we're going to talk about that, but we're trying to get up that peak before sunset was a big goal we had. So we were all working together to try to make sure that we got things going along and not pushing too hard, but pushing enough that we could hit those goals. And you can speak on that. But yeah, we came into Walnut. He was tired, but we were feeling pretty good that we got the Walnut, and then he recharged, and you got ready to go out again, and y'all had some food for us when we got in as well. So I mean, that was great too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Grace did a great job with that too. I kind of passed out, got about 2.5 hours of total sleep, fell asleep a
Yeah,
couple of times. And she ran and got breakfast and kind of get everybody fueled back up and headed in the right direction. And yeah, we heard y'all were coming in. We were watching y'all on the live tracker. That's another thing about this race. It was just so well put together. You could track exactly where everyone was. It predicted to when they were going to get to their aid stations and waypoints and things like that. So it was just really cool to see that and have that tool, because it made it really easy as pacers and crew, to know exactly when we needed to get our stuff ready to get ready to jump back into those races. And whenever y'all come into Walnut, I had all my gear laid out and everything, and I think Dan decided to take a nap. He was going to lay down for like, I think an hour was the first game plan that he was going to do, and man, he made it 15 minutes and he was back up and ready to roll. At that point, he
yeah,
was pretty dang tired. he's getting a little bit delirious in there and goofy and everything. So it was kind of fun. We knew we were going to have a rough time, but kind of knew we also needed to make sure he stayed on track and pushed through. It didn't stop for too much and get stowed up and everything like that as well. Um, but y'all rocked it just as well. Y'all came out of that stretch that we talked about right there, Tut Hill to Walnut Canyon, really making a lot of good progress. I know y'all got passed by the 36ers as they came through, and he was talking about catching them and seeing who he could beat. And I think in the end he ended up beating a couple of the 36ers to the
He
finish
did.
line.
Yeah, he did.
So that was pretty cool to see. I know he was fired up about that. Um, but after getting some food, after getting repacked, we knew that the next stretch was long. It ended up being 22 and a half miles from Walnut Canyon back up to the finish line in Flagstaff. And we started that in the 12 o'clock hour and rolled out of there. We had to make sure we had everything on us, because there was not another aid station where the crews had access to us. So there was no grabbing cold gear from somebody later. There was no grabbing the lights or headlamps, extra food. We knew we had a water station and then one more aid station up at Eldon at the top of the mountain. But
Yeah.
there was a lot of calorie burn and a lot of hours and miles in between Walnut Canyon and getting to that aid station up on top of Eldon. So it was going to be pretty tough, and we knew that, so we packed accordingly coming out of there.
And that you guys had a heck of a climb. You guys to get up to Eldon. What was the elevation of Eldon?
I'm not sure exactly what it was. I know it crept up towards 10,000. Was it like 2,800 feet of elevation gain or something like that?
Where we were at. So we were at like around 7,000 ish or right under.
Yeah, I
And
think it
then
was bumping around 10K.
I know the other reason you wanted to get on and off that thing before dark because they were talking about temperatures being 9 degrees at night up on that mountain. So that
Yeah,
was the
and
other reason.
no, absolutely. Seeing 9-degree temperatures, and then spoiler alert, we got up there to the top of it, and we crossed over like 5 or 6 different snow patches of snow still being up there,
Wow.
um, just to kind of demonstrate how cold it still was on top of that mountain, and how weird the weather was, honestly. But we caught some flat in the low valleys, and we were in probably like the 60s, coming out of the aid station down there out of Walnut Canyon, and we trekked a little bit out of there. Did some power hiking more than anything, just trying to get his feet back under him. He was fighting some blisters and a callus and a couple other things that I'm sure we'll touch on later. But really keeping him going, keeping his mind off of things, just talking about several different things. I know y'all talked about some crazy stuff out there. We dove into some movies. We're quoting Braveheart and a couple of others at times, and just kind of keeping morale up and keeping him going.
I'll let
And
him talk about some of those things if he wants to. We talked about all kinds of crazy stuff, but whatever we could to get his mind off of the pain and the hurting and the blisters and calluses and all that kind of stuff, and just keep himself going one step at a time. It was really cool.
yeah, and man, while we're on that, before we get into Eldon, one of the biggest things that kind of I guess we could explain here is what we do as pacers. You know, it's not necessarily, yeah, we increased his pace and kept him on track, but it's just as much kind of as a safety thing, as a motivator. There's a few different factors. Um, One was monitoring. He would take naps. So during these races, you don't get to sleep just a ton at one time. Obviously, because you're beat up, banged up, you're in pain, so you don't get good sleep for one. But also, you don't want to sit down and have your muscles tighten up on you, and all that. So what was the length of the naps he took whenever you were with him?
We didn't. I mean, he mentioned it a couple times. He's like, "Man, that spot right there looks like a good place to take a nap." and but he kept himself going. He thought about it. I know he thought about it, and He said, "I may have to lay down in here for a couple of minutes," and I was like, "Okay, just let me know." But he never did. We did stop one time, so that he had some tightness in his right knee area and lower thigh. And so we worked that out a little bit, kind of worked on his leg a little bit, and just took a couple of minutes to kind of work that out and for him to catch his breath. Other than that, though, he pretty much kept moving. He never did lay down, except for that moment where we we're working on the leg there. Um, but as far as catching any Z's, he really didn't. He was really tired and mentioned that several times and kind of was zoning in and out a little bit, but he never did actually lay down, even though we talked about, man, a hammock would fit really good between those two trees.
Yeah.
There
No.
was a lot of that and a lot of, man, under that tree looks like a great place to take a nap. But
No. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
gotta hand it to him, man. He's tough as nails. He just kept going, just kept pushing.
He did. He powered through a lot. It showed just freaking how tough you got to be out there on something like that, and putting your body through that. And man, I think he did take a couple naps in that last stretch with us. And we're talking 2 to 5 minutes on the naps. And I know that
Yeah,
sounds crazy to anybody that doesn't know the ultra world, but he woke up like revitalized, fired back up, motivated to get going again. And he had a few of those while we were out there. So making sure he didn't sleep too long was one of the things that we were having to do as pacers, and crew. And then along with that, it as crazy as it sounds, whenever you're out there doing this, you forget to eat, you forget to drink. So we were
too.
out there reminding
Yeah,
him to get on his hydration and his nutrition,
yeah,
helping keep him in line, monitoring when he was getting too cold or too hot, helping him make sure he got gear on and off and all that good stuff. Um, Besides that, some of the other things were, man, you're delirious out there. You were tired to the point of sometimes falling asleep on your feet, and staggering around, being very uncoordinated. And we were about to go on Mount Eldon up there with some very steep ledges and drop offs and unsure footing. So that was something we were really worried about leading up to that as well. Um,
right.
but man, we kicked around in the foothills for 5 or 6 miles, and then rolled up towards the lookout trail, and started our ascent up towards Eldon. We passed and got passed by a couple of different runners in there. Some people moving really well that late in the race, and some people really struggling with that climb. Where Dan was still in a bind because his feet were killing him and he was extremely tired. But I mean, even with that, there were sections where he was just powering through, just power hiking up those hills. It was insane. Um, and yeah, we gained a few thousand feet of elevation climbing up to Eldon. Had to lay down, take a couple naps at times. Had to get up there and kind of take a break and get some nutrition back in his body because he was starting to really feel the pain of not having anything in his system. And it was just switchbacks, super steep all the way up. Lasted for a couple of miles, and probably a few miles on the climb until we got to within 1 mile of the ridge line up there, and then it just went super steep, and it was just switching back and forth over and over and over. And he got up there, and man, we took a small break every once in a while, but for the most part, he powered through it. And getting towards the top, I mean, we come up on a lot of people, caught up to some different people, made those snow crossings where we were making sure we didn't slip because the top layer of the snow had kind of melted and it formed ice and everything. And by
Right.
that time, we're also getting hit up on the ridge line with like 50, 60 mile an hour gusts of wind that are literally pushing you around up there. Um, so it was crazy, but um, we were able to make sure he got up there and kept going. Had an awesome kind of emotional moment whenever we got up to the top, just overcoming that massive obstacle. And he'll talk more at length on that, I'm sure, because that was a huge point. And then once we got to the top, we snapped some pictures just for good time's sake and memory's sake and everything. And started our descent down just a little bit. Before you start going down the entire mountain, you head over to the aid station. You've got to kind of cross at an uneven elevation. There's a couple of rolling ups and downs. But the worst part was you end up in an open area out there, where that wind just destroys you, just smacks you right from the side. To the point of, just to illustrate how bad it was, they were trying to fly a drone over for the live feed to come watch us cross the path. And we heard that sucker just wow, wide open, trying to get to us. And then it disappeared and they tried to do it again. And we heard it get closer that time, but they finally gave up. And we made it the last quarter or third of a mile to the aid station, up there at Eldon. and they had some great food up there. They had ribs at that point. Last aid station of the race, you just fought a hard battle to get up to the top of there, and they had ribs, they had sausage wraps, they had all kinds of different good stuff up there that we really needed. So we got him fed. I ate some food as well. We had his feet taped up because he was fighting some blisters and some things. Um, and we made it up there with just about an hour left before sunrise or sunset, maybe a little bit less than that. Um, so from that point on, we knew if we hung around up there, it was going to get real, real cold. Um, and already started getting cold on us. So we packed our gear on a little bit, some of our winter gear, cold weather gear, and started our way down the mountain. Kicked out of the aid station pretty quick and just started jetting. He'd been fighting some stuff, and of course, with the big uphill, he hadn't been able to run in a while. So coming off the backside of that mountain, he was fired up, motivated, and he actually ran probably 90% of the downhill on the backside of that mountain, uh, which is still just beyond crazy to me at that point in that
That's
race.
incredible. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's tough.
yeah, especially being a big guy like he is, tall.
Yeah,
It takes a little bit more impact on the dang legs like that. But
it does. The downhills are tougher on him for sure, on his body, but yeah, he's tough. He, like I said, he's tough as nails.
yeah, no, and he did a phenomenal job coming out of there. And from that aid station, we had like 8.6 left to the top up there. Um, and when I say top, that's the finish line up at Flagstaff. So he powered through 2.5 miles downhill, just trucking along, wanting to get through. And by the time we got to the bottom, man, sun was starting to go down. You hit switch back to a single track. It was getting dark and hard to see the trail markers. And we had a few people around us actually get lost in there. And luckily they were able to track our headlamps and see where we ended up because we found the trail eventually down there with the help of the watch navigation and everything. And man, we kept trucking down through the foothills again, a little bit of ups and downs, all on the single track trail out there. Um, like I said, had some people around us a couple times through there, but man, by the time it got dark, it's weird and crazy to me. Like whenever the sun came up on y'all, I'm sure it was kind of an uplifting, a little bit of motivating deal, right?
Right, right.
Started moving a little bit better.
It was definitely, and a lot of people say that in those races, like make the nighttime before you get to this to the sunrise are really tough times. You just want to slow down, you want to stop. But when the sun comes up, it kind of gives you renewed energy, and I think he felt a little bit of that. That's why I think we were able to power through that section, and he didn't really didn't lay down to take a nap at all, and just kind of made himself keep going. So I think that sun coming up did give him some energy for sure.
Yeah, and with the Kelly aid station and everything on the ridge line, but then also coming down that last hill, going back into Flagstaff. By the time we hit the bottom, the sun was setting and it got real dark on us, and which was great because we got off the mountain in time. We didn't really hit the cold weather that was like just terrible, terrible. So it played out really well, right? But with that, it brought down kind of a little bit of tiredness. His body just
Right.
kind of and came down, and he he was getting to the point of being back out of it. We were just trudging along. I think he was kind of just zombie walking, getting through some of those sections. I got in front of him at that point, trying to kind of guide him and keep him motivated and keep him looking at me and headed in the right direction. I was talking to him, trying to keep his mind on things. And I think we ended up doing some caffeine strips and some other things like that, some food with caffeine in it, trying to get him just motivated and pushing along and everything. And it was an absolute grind. At that point, we had like 5 miles left or something back to the finish line, and then just trudging along over uneven trail and having to pay attention where you put your feet. And as we got closer and closer, he kept asking me how far we were out, and I just told him, hey, we got 4 miles here, or we got 3 miles or 3.5 miles here, and he'd get just like, man, that's so crazy, and he'd kind of get down because it still had so much left, but
Yeah.
your mind doesn't process that you've already gone 247 miles. So
Yeah, he did that with me too on our section of it. Where's the aid station at? And you could tell it kind of, but yeah, you're looking any little nugget at that point when you're in that point of the race toward the end of any little positive nugget can kind of power you on to go. But on the other side of that, any little negative thinking about it can pull you down real quick. So it's tough, to keep your mind, like you're saying, you've already ran 200 and X amount of miles already. So, but you have a lot of emotions and a lot of mental games going on in your head. So that's why it's good to be able to say some things that give him a little positive pump here and there, and just get a little bit ounce more of energy out of him in certain spots or whatever when he's feeling, low or he's feeling challenged. You can kind of tell. So the mental side of it plays a lot, big huge part in finishing a race like that.
It does, and that's exactly right. I mean, whenever we were out there, you and I both talked about it, just trying to focus on the positive and everything we could. Focus on the reasons he was doing what he was doing. That race offered him a lot of closure in some parts of his life. I'll let him get into that if he wants to, or if he doesn't want to, that's fine as well. But he gave me his reason for doing the race, and he also had Grace out there and a great support system as well. And we just kept reiterating those reasons for him pushing on and finishing this thing. And the thing about the negative side is too, you can talk about, as a pacer, you can talk about how much something sucks, but you need to spin it in a positive way, or it needs to be a joke. If you're laughing about it and it's in a positive place and positive energy around it, that's all perfectly fine. But whenever you're out there pacing and you just both get down like, man, my legs are so sore, this sucks, like
Right.
it's so cold, like if it's got the negative
Exactly.
connotation and it's bringing, like it's sucking energy out of people, you cannot have that going on at all.
That's exactly right. Even though my legs weren't feeling the greatest, I didn't tell him that. I just kept letting him know I'm right here behind you. I'm pushing you. I'm right here with you, and just kept on. We were, like I said, we were talking about all kinds of stuff, and just life or whatever, and just something to keep our minds going and keep it off of the pain or whatever was going on in his head. And and you just take one step at a time. Next thing you know, you're at the aid station. So it's all about that kind of stuff. It's cool. You learn a lot pacing, and you see how some of the things I take away from it is, now I've done 100-mile race, and then I had some dark moments in my race, and you helped me get through those moments. And then I got to see Dan going through this massive 250-mile race, and I saw him going through dark moments, and I could relate in some areas of that, and could feel like I could help him see. But I was also learning at the same time, because I want to do some more stuff. So, but being able to see that and experience that race with him, I mean, it was a blessing to me. It was a experience that you just can't get unless you go do it. And so it's priceless. It really was priceless.
Genuinely, yeah. No, it was. There's nothing else like that. And just going out there and being able to help somebody, and just for no other reason than, hey, I want to get out here and try to help you get through this thing if I can. And thoroughly enjoyed every bit of it. But we got a couple minutes left here before we got to shut it down. But just want to round it out. We came up with about 3 miles left into Buffalo Park. Started seeing lights. Started hearing dogs barking. Getting close to the city. We knew we were close by. And with the caffeine strips, it kind of came back mentally a little bit as we got closer. And man, with 2 miles left, we got, or 2.5 miles left up in Buffalo Park. I think he could smell the finish line out there, and man, he
Yeah.
decided to pick it up. Started doing some running again. Just after all of that, he was out there still running, still trucking along, putting down an awesome pace. Um, and we jogged it in for a long, long time before we stopped and did some walking coming into Flagstaff. Had a couple crosswalks to get to, and then came around the corner, and that's where the chase cam picked us up for the live stream, and had a few people back home watching us run in on the live stream on YouTube with the um, Air Viper Racing that was putting on, and it was just phenomenal, getting to capture every moment and the emotions of that finish. And he ran it in, rounded the corner, and came into the corral and across the finish line and knocked it out. And there you go, 250.
It was an awesome moment. It was just, we saw you guys pop up on the they had a monitor there so we could see the camera guy when he come up behind you. So we saw that first thing, and it was cool. And then we saw your headlamps turn the corner and coming down the street to us. So it was just the adrenaline, the excitement was just going crazy. And I mean, it was unbelievable, just unbelievable. And to see him finish that thing, So finish that task he started out on, Monday, finishing that thing Friday night it was just unbelievable. It was just, I don't like that word either, but it was just great. It was fantastic. I'm so happy for Dan, and I'm happy for Grace. They make a great team. She did outstanding. She paced him for almost 70 miles herself.
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely.
there. It was just a phenomenal experience. Dan was, congratulations, brother. That was just outstanding.
Yeah. Now to say the very least, man, you killed that race. And we're thankful that you let us be a part of that. There's a lot of crazy emotions, a lot of different things we went through just being on it. So I can't imagine what that looks like. But one thing I do want to touch on is you've inspired us. Both of us are extremely motivated coming out of that. We're looking at what's next in line for us. KD 225 coming in October. Super stoked about that. And, hopefully looking at Cocodona next year for one or maybe even two of us, who knows? But it's done nothing but inspire us and help push us along this journey that we're on already, man. And I can't tell you thank you enough. It was a phenomenal race. It was a blessing to be a part of it, and just a fantastically enjoyable weekend,
Absolutely. Yeah, it was cool.
man. Yeah. Well, do you have anything else from the pacer perspective? I'm sure we'll pick up all the other details and get into the other 190 miles with Dan here in just a little bit. But I wanted to put something out to y'all, make sure that y'all know what we have going on here. But you got anything else, Pops? We got about a minute left.
Man, it was just a great experience. I'm so glad it was a great weekend to be able to spend it out there with Dan and with Grace and out there with you. It was just one for the ages, man. I'll never forget it. It was fantastic.
Not could not agree more, man. Uh, Always blessed to be out there with you. It's cool to have each other out there and pick each other up and be able to pass that on to somebody like Dan and to Grace, and to just help them get through this crazy, crazy race and these crazy events that they're doing, and I look forward to being out there on the trail with them and enjoying some time. And man, it's just been really, really fun. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we get into.
Absolutely. And you next year in the Cocodona, probably.
That's right. Yes, sir. Well, man, Pops, I enjoyed it. Thank you for coming on and recapping this thing with me.
Oh, thank you. Enjoyed it.
All
Anytime.
right. All right, man. Well, you take it easy. All right, guys, I hope you'll enjoy that awesome recap episode with my dad, Mr. Billy Pitts. We're super excited to get Dan on here and hear his side of the entire story, plus about his journey like we talked about before. Guys, if you're interested in any of the races that we mentioned, give us a shout. That's at Next in Line Development on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Please leave a rating or review or comment or like or subscribe. Just interact with us. Help us pop up in that search bar a little bit earlier as people look for personal development and self-help type podcast, guys. Thank you to everyone who has supported us along the way, and always be prepared for whatever is next in line.